Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sugar Show. That's right. Our guest here tonight, in a short amount of time in the wrestling world, has made quite the impact. As a matter of fact, he went from the baseball mound to the wrestling ring, and he's already accomplished, maybe even one more, in the wrestling ring than he did in the baseball mound, because literally in a few short months, he is gone from maybe a guy you wouldn't know of now to a guy who's the reigning, defending Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion. He's going to talk about that, plus his most recent match on the debut of Power Hour from Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling, where he actually wrestled somebody in the match that is actually in our Hall of Fame. And you know I'm going to have to ask him some questions about it because he simply put, as I like to call him, just goes by Brandon Costelli. Because sometimes he rocks hard, sometimes he's a mauler, sometimes he might be somebody that's close to being Sneaky Pete. But I'm going to talk to our guest tonight about that. Plus, talk to him about his own journey that led him from going to the baseball mound to the wrestling ring, plus some other stuff he's doing. He's actually been in the media. He's had his own podcast. He's also been, well, a superb wrestling card collector and baseball card collector. And he's also going to talk about a couple of other promotions you're going to see him in coming up this weekend. Also for our friends over at Atlantic All-Star Wrestling. I'm excited about this one because last month on Sportswire Radio, we had a guy, Sugar Ray Taylor, who right afterwards won the CCW Carnage Hardcore Championship. And right before our guest came on to Sportswire Radio, well, he became the Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire Championship. I could go on and on and on about our guest, but I certainly want to now get to him because he's going to certainly want to hear my introduction. Because after all, if Chase Wakefield got this introduction, Brandon Costelli got this introduction, Ace Christian, Kid Mike, Van Hansen, all people he shared a locker room with or two, and maybe even some guy named Judgment that came on the show this weekend, we have to say hello and formally bring on the man that has the longest arm, the greatest charm, and the bringer of harm. So let's get right to it. And ladies and gentlemen, introduced our guest tonight on his show, The Sugar Show. So let's get right to it. So with that, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, number one. Sports show. The man that has got the longest arm, the greatest charm, the bringer of arms. His name is the reigning, defending Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion. It's Sugar Den Stofko. The champ is here. Welcome to the Sugar Show. Champ, how are you?
That was something. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. So that's quite impressive. I mean, this watch doesn't work. It's all for show, but the time was ticking. I'm doing very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you know, when I said the names that have got that introduction that you've now shared a locker room with, certainly Kid Mike and Mr. V to the H, Van Hansen, Ace Christian, the Blaze, Ace Christian, Brandon Costelli, a man you technically have a victory over, and of course, who can never forget, Chase Wakefield, the Bitcoin billionaire, and also some guy named Judgment. If they got those introductions, they've been getting them over and over and over. You are, after all, Sugar Dan Stofko, and that championship might even be literally bigger than my head. I had to certainly do my best and give you that intro.
This championship is quite big. I'm going to be honest with you. I can't put it around my waist. Like, just
How does
full
it fit in
disclosure,
luggage? I want to know. How does that thing fit in luggage?
it doesn't. Like, straight up, it doesn't. Now, I have like a smaller suitcase,
Okay.
but I tried to pack it in this weekend and I couldn't. So I had to like just bring it in the car and hide it with my merch and put like a blanket over top and hopefully it'd be broken in the car, because I don't think Kid Mike and Van would be too happy with me.
Yeah,
If I
I've gotten to
lost it
know
within a
Mr.
week.
Hansen. I've known him a little longer than Kid Mike, and I could certainly see Mr. V to the H not being too happy. That I can
Yeah,
confirm.
so hopefully they're not watching and don't have to know about that. I would get a bigger luggage bag just for this title, but yeah, I can't fit it around my waist. I had a whole idea to open up the jacket, have the belt. It's not going to happen. So I got to figure something out here.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I mean, Kenny Omega during COVID had like 85
yeah,
championships, and I guess he was figuring it out. But I mean, obviously, you've got something that I think I've never seen before. And again, you've been a baseball player, so you know
yeah.
all about different things like that. So the fact that you're having trouble with it, I think that certainly speaks volumes. But obviously, it is an absolute honor to have you. You've got an interesting story. I've interviewed a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of athletes. I've interviewed a lot of wrestlers. I've interviewed a lot of people in different walks of life. But in a lot of ways, you actually kind of maybe merge some of the different types of things I've done actually in my 5-year career. I've interviewed a lot of college athletes. I've interviewed certainly a lot of wrestlers, and you've done both. But I'll obviously start at the top, though. For those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, Sugar Dan Stofko, I know that you were certainly too hot to handle. I know that you have the longest arm. I know that you have the greatest charm, and you're the bringer of harm. So talk about how you were able to use all of that and continue to bring harm to the likes of your opponents that we saw this past Friday on the debut show of Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling's Power Hour. You defeated somebody you trained with at the Riot City compound, and also defeated a guy in our Hall of Fame, a man I know very, very well, a fellow vlogger, and a man who's trained in the New Japan dojo, and he has been in a number of different companies. I'll simply call him Brandon Castelli. But talk about, champ, how you were able to be successful in the debut of Power Hour.
Honestly, the win means more now than it did when it initially happened to me, because I had no idea about the whole New Japan Dojo thing. I did not know that.
Brandon mentioned it. I think he mentioned it on here once before, but it's not something he talks about much. I know Brandon a while. He doesn't talk about that much.
Well, so New Japan is like that. I'll just say it. Like, probably not the best thing to say for the future negotiations and all that, but like that's my dream company. That's where I want to wrestle more than anything. Like, that's New Japan Pro Wrestling is what kept me and my love and passion for wrestling alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then finding out after the fact that he trained at Foley's gym, that was just a cool little, extra thing to add on top of the win. It was cool sharing the ring with Ron, who trained me, continues to train me, and I have a great relationship with. It was a lot of fun in there. It hurt a lot. I didn't feel great afterwards, but I saw an opportunity, and this elbow, or as I like to call it, a hellbow, did not miss.
Yeah, you know what? We were talking about this off the air, and I was like, how long was that match? And I was like, oh, was it like 5 minutes, whatever it was, maybe less than 5? And you go, no, I timed the match. It was a little over like 2 minutes. And I was like, really? I was like, it was that short of a match, and you basically got the job done, like you said, with an elbow, or as you put it, champ, a hellbow to the head of Ron Holiday, and it was all she wrote. 1, 2, 3.
When that thing lands, you're not getting up. Nobody's going to
I would be dead. Listen, if it was me, I'd be dead. And there's probably some people on Sportswire that actually watch these shows after some things I've said the past few months that would love for you to do that to me. But hey, that's here nor there.
I'm just saying, like, it could come at a 45-minute mark, a 30-minute mark, or 2 minutes in. It could be the first thing I hit, and I end a match in 5 or 6 seconds. It doesn't matter. If it lands, it's over. Unless you get lucky like somebody did this past weekend, close to a rope, and able to get a toe on the rope. And that's the only thing that's going to save you from it. You're not getting out of that move once it hits. Flush, elbow to the back of the head. You're not getting up.
Absolutely. I'm going to put your plugs up here in a second because I want to put all your social medias up for people who can get in touch with you, because I'm really excited about this interview, and I was talking about it yesterday and on the air and off the air with my guest, obviously, Omen Black, who had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Omen. Omen's our first 2-time Hall of Famer into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. But, I want to ask you this question, though, because I've interviewed a lot of people. I've done a lot of different things in my career. And what's it like being in the ring with somebody that you're training with that is training you? That's kind of, I guess it's surreal, but maybe weird at the same time. Just talk to me about that.
Ron is the first. So when I showed up at a company to help set up a ring and take down the ring without knowing anybody.
Oh,
I
okay.
drove almost 3 hours to do it to
Wow.
Maryland. He was the first person. I'm sorry, second person I saw. One of the first people I talked to, and he helped me out with some chain wrestling. Just little old me that had no idea how to do any chain, knew how to do a bunch of moves, but didn't know how to do wrestling. And he showed me some stuff. And then next, I'm training at Riot City Compound, and he was there. I don't remember if he was there my first day, but I know for a fact he was there my second. And our relationship just grew from there, traveling all around the East Coast together, setting up rings, tearing down the rings, early mornings, late evenings, driving back to drop off the U-Haul that was carrying the ring.
Oh,
So when I
wow.
found out we were doing a triple threat together, it was a weird feeling. And you mentioned about the training together. We know, and I know a lot of the stuff he does. He was a part of a lot of the stuff that I do and helping teach me how to execute a lot of these things. So you kind of saw it with me attempting a Rana. He kind of was able to stop me from getting full extension. And it almost cost me the match because of it. But you get like those kind of weird little aspects to a match when you go against somebody that you're so experienced and used to being in the ring with. It's the tiny little details that a normal eye might not be able to see. You know what I mean? And
Sure, sure.
he could see it was coming, and he made a counter to it. It was cool, and it was cool to me to be able to beat somebody that means so much to me, and that I truly do love. Like I love Ron Holiday, and it
I
was
think
really
he's training also, if I'm not mistaken, DVG, I think, has learned some
yep,
stuff from him also. So
yep,
when I heard the name, I'm like, okay, now I know the name very well, because I think DVG has mentioned him as well. When you mentioned Maryland, Riot City Comp, I'm okay, now
yep.
that's a light. So that's really cool. I'm curious on this, and in a way, I'll for a minute talk about your baseball journey. But when you talk about setting up the ring, and I'm curious, how is that similar or different to when, let's say, guys get the field ready for when you guys go out there and play? Obviously, you were a
Mhm.
college baseball player. We'll get into that. So I'm curious, and just maybe talk about, like, is it different? Is it similar to, let's say, when you set the ring up, get the ring ready for showtime, versus like when you have obviously your groundskeeper crew that kind of gets a field ready for game day, or dealing with conditions like when it's like here in New York, or maybe where you are right now where it rained all day, you try to now see if you can get a game in. I'm just curious on like that preparation, and if there's some differences or similarities. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks way more. I'll be honest with you. Just it's a lot heavier. Takes a lot more time. It's early days, late nights, but um, I think I have a different perspective on it than a lot of people.
Okay.
I did not grow up a big WWE fan. I grew up watching. It's the first company I watched, and all that, my exposure. But I fell out of love with wrestling during the time in which I was strictly watching WWE as a kid. What got me into wrestling, like hardcore, was independent professional wrestling. And in doing that as a young, middle schooler, high schooler, even like end of elementary school, watching it, listening to podcasts, reading books, and I would listen and
Well, you sound like
about
me almost. I mean, that's how I really.
yeah,
I mean, I was always a wrestling fan, but really doing this during COVID, I became all of a sudden like back into wrestling. Like I hadn't been in like 10 years. I mean, I really threw my coverage of independent wrestling in Britain, and then later to where we are. I could really relate to that. That's really
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. It was one of those where hearing about guys, doing the drives where you're not making any money,
I
and
know
you're
it's
going there and
not
you're
easy.
setting up the ring, you're taking down, you're driving back home because you can't afford a hotel. And I fell in love with the idea of it, of the grind. And honestly, like growing up, I was a freshman or sophomore in high school when Being the Elite started, and those were my guys, Kenny and the Bucks,
Yep.
and watching the Bucks vlogs and seeing them with all the travel, selling the merch, all that, just the grind of independent wrestling.
And you were
That's
a
what I
D3
wanted to do.
baseball player. D3, being a
Mhm.
D3 athlete is kind of similar to being
It,
an independent wrestler. I know that firsthand because I've been covering college D3
yeah.
athletics for over 5 years. That I know
Mhm.
right off the bat.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a grind where you're not given anything. You know what I mean? Like for baseball, and I know you said you want to talk about it more then, but
In a
like
little while, yeah, sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
even then, it's like, you're getting the crappy buses and you're getting no food. Or if you are getting food, it's the weekend cafeteria food that's no
Yeah,
good.
it's the the,
And
the experience as a
yeah,
D3 athlete. It's just like
yeah. So it's like I'm just
terrible.
kind of used to it, I guess. You know what I mean? I'm used to the grind, but I love the grind. I really do. Like if I get a weekend where there's nothing for whatever reason, I kind of start to go crazy because it's like, what do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good
So
point, because, I guess maybe also in a way, if you were a D1 athlete and went to, being an independent pro wrestler, maybe you wouldn't have appreciated as much, because again, and I know this firsthand. I know a lot of Division III college athletes, and I'm friends with a lot of coaches at that level still, so I know that grind firsthand. So maybe in a way, that experience, we'll really talk about baseball in a little while, but maybe that experience of being a D3 athlete, for those that may not know this, that are hearing this, when you're a Division III athlete, you have no scholarship. You don't get anything in terms of like food or any room and board. Basically, you're there and you're playing, you're on a team, but you pretty much get nothing. It's literally like you have to work, go to school, or if you have to work, it's because you don't have any really financial aid or anything you get. And like that's it. When you're a D1 athlete, and to a small extent, a Division II athlete, you get a scholarship or some type of coverage that helps you be an athlete. But as a D3 player, you're basically like walking on, wanting to be there, and like that's it. So like in a lot of ways, maybe that did prepare you for it.
I think it did. I mean, there's ways like, yeah, you don't get a straight up athletic scholarship, but you
No.
get you get an academic scholarship, right? Like I'm not exposing anything. Like you get an academic
Oh, I know
scholarship
it
that,
firsthand. I mean, you're not
right,
saying that
you're getting an
on here.
academic scholarship that's essentially an athletic. But like I was taken care of in some ways, but you know, it, it's the grind doesn't change. You don't have the great equipment that other people do. And
No.
and truthfully, like my school for our baseball program is doing a lot better right now, which is awesome. And I'm so
I'm
happy
going
for
to
all of
get to
them.
that.
Yeah, but like everything, just the way they're being treated, the layout of things, it's getting so much better, and it makes the grind that we went through, like my class, the guys that came before me, even that much more worth it. Where it's like, all right, things weren't great for us, but it's better for the new generation, the new guys, which is really cool. And like we've seen that in independent wrestling too, where I think a lot of guys are more taken care of now because of the guys that came before us, which is what it's all about. So
Absolutely. There's no question what you guys do to put your body on the line. I think that you guys should be taken care of and some. And I'll certainly do my best to be able to shine light on that. But I hope people also check out Dan on all these great platforms here. He's definitely an up and coming star. And like I said, he's too hot to handle. He's got the longest arm. He's certainly got the greatest charm, and he's the bringer of harm. So you want to make sure that you don't be like Brandon Castelli and, of course, Ron Holiday. We saw a Power Hour coming up from Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling. So definitely keep an eye on that for the future of him. But also I wanted to talk to you in the fact in speaking about Enterprise and Amplified Pro Wrestling. I'll say hello to some people in a few minutes. But since I see you have this championship, we've joked around about it, but in a short amount of time, you've arguably already won more than you did on the baseball mound. So I have to ask you, what does it mean to you right now at this moment on March the 5th, 2024, to be the Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion?
I forgot what it was like to win because while I didn't win much in college, in high school I did. My summer ball team and you might be people that aren't on the East Coast might not know much about it, but you being an East Coaster as well, American Legion baseball
Oh yeah,
is a huge thing here on
I
the East
actually had a
Coast.
background in baseball. If you ever heard of the Atlantic Collegiate Baseball
Hmm.
League, the ACBL, I actually was involved in it for a brief period of time. I was actually a general manager of a team here in New York. So I was actually, this is before COVID, scouting and recruiting players who were like you, like D2, D3 athletes, more on the D3 end, to try to get them to play in a summer league, which would give them those at bats, kind of like your American Legion League. So
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with it, sure.
Yeah. So I won, or my team, we won 3 championships in 4 years. So we were used to winning. Like I was used to winning. It was one of those where you hear it all the time from the great teams, especially more so in football. But it gets to the point where winning doesn't feel like anything. Losing is just such a horrible feeling. So we would lose 3-4 games a year, and those would be the worst. The winning just was like, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. Then go to college and winning doesn't happen much. We're in a great league with great teams and great players, and we struggled. And to then come into wrestling, and it's quick in terms of from when I made my debut and how many matches, but this has been a lifelong journey. And I would say my wrestling journey, in ring wise, if you want to call it, I wouldn't say in ring, but it started as soon as I graduated college. Not having anywhere to train, any way to train, going into the backyard and learning how to bump on an old bed mattress, and if that wasn't going to be used on the ground because of Mick Foley and reading his book and flipping himself over to the car and
Yep.
all that.
Yep.
I mean, that's when it started. So to me, it's been a 2-year journey. All people really see is a 3 month, which is fine. But I started training at Riot City, August, I believe, 30th of 2023, and here in March 2024, I guess February 2024, I'm a champion, and it is crazy, and it didn't sit in or hit me really, I guess I should say, until yesterday. Funny enough,
I think because I'm coming on the Sportzwire. I think maybe I have to talk about this because I know we were speaking about having you come on with a couple different things on my end. Kind of led us to doing the interview tonight, and I was like really excited about you. We were talking off the air, and I'm like, this guy's going to be really good. And I was like, let's do it earlier because I'm actually going to be home all day today. It's not every day I'm home right now in the afternoons, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this guy. And yeah, that's a cool story. And I want to say hello to some people first before I come back to things. I have a lot to talk to you about, a lot of things to talk about. I want to say hello to my buddies in the IMF over at the Iowa Midwest Federation Wrestling Company, kind of like our counterparts of Enterprise and Amplified. They have a show coming up next weekend, St. Patrick's Day Massacre. We're going to be covering it next Friday. And of course, I have donated a ticket to their show, and I plan to donate a ticket once again to the Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling show coming up this month because I'm always about all wrestling matters. So if there is somebody that would like to go to the show to watch Sugar Dan Stofko in the ring, I'm going to make sure that your dreams come true because that's what we're all about here. So want to thank also everybody here tuned in from Enterprise and Amplified. Also want to thank them for inducting me into the Hall of Fame. I mean, thank you for the nice words. And, yes, I have done a lot in a short amount of time, 5 years, 4 in wrestling. But, look, I appreciate that. And I want to thank the guys. And I want to put my support out there. And we'll talk about the show coming up. I want to say hello to my buddy Michael Christian, of course, who actually retired his ex-stepfather in the ring not too long ago. Kind of weird, right? He actually retired his stepfather in the ring, but he's here with us, and he's thinking about maybe what's next. Want to say hello to a very good friend of you and I, obviously a man you're going to probably see out this past weekend coming up here, Mr. Kid Mike, my champ. Couldn't be more proud to call him that. And we couldn't be more proud to cover Enterprise Pro Wrestling. Want to say hello to my buddy, Mr. Ethan Sorensen. I'm doing great. I'm here live, and I'm not indoors. I'm not outdoors because it's raining in New York, and I'm here talking to a Sugar Dan Stofko, my second Sugar person in about a month. I had Sugar Ray Taylor, aka Sugar Sean Taylor, and I got Sugar Dan Stofko. So things can't be too bad after all. Congratulations, Dan, on becoming a champion. Absolutely. Let me ask you though this question. And you talked about going into the ring. When I was talking about, I'm going to come back to Enterprise, Amplify. I'm going to get to Atlantic. Some other places you're going to be in the ring over the next hour or so. But when you were a baseball player and you came back on the mound from the injury that you had that caused you to miss a lot of time, and on top of that, you had the unfortunate thing, you were a student athlete during COVID. So you got a cup of coffee, you played it in 2020, and 2021, you basically didn't play, and you came back for your senior year. But did you know, let's say in 21 or 22, that when you were playing baseball, that baseball wasn't going to work out, you weren't going to play any more baseball, and you were going to wrestling? Was there ever a thought that you wanted to continue your baseball career in some form, whether it was independent ball or, some form of, let's say, semi-pro baseball? I mean, can you talk to me about that on behalf of the audience and when you decided there was a moment that you were no longer going to basically play baseball?
I had the weirdest connection with baseball because I loved it. I love it. I love baseball more now than ever before.
Why?
I'm a bigger fan because I'm not in it, it's just. So I believe are you a Mets or a Yankees fan?
I'm a Mets fan because I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and the Mets were not as good as the Yankees, and I've always been a believer in the underdog. So when I grew up, I was actually, when I grew up in Brooklyn, we were closer to then Shea Stadium. So, and I had an uncle who was such a diehard baseball fan. He knew you couldn't ask him about anything else in the world. He wouldn't know about the stock market. He wouldn't know who's president of the United States, but he knew like every New York Mets team from like 1962 to like 2000. So I was a Mets fan. That was me. And you're a Phillies fan, which I know is you're going to probably bring up 2007 and 2008 on me, I'm sure.
Look, so yes, I'm a diehard baseball fan, but a diehard Phillies fan. I don't miss a game. if I'm out traveling, going to a show or something, it's on the radio. Like I don't
Yep.
miss the game.
And you
But
have John McCarthy on the call. He used to call the
yep,
Redskins. Yep. So I know that
absolutely.
very well.
Yeah.
And John
So
Kruk's on the call now too, I think, right?
Kruk,
John
yep,
Kruk?
yep.
Krucky.
So I always loved baseball. I loved playing it. I loved the games. I didn't enjoy the practice. I didn't enjoy school. School was the biggest thing, right? Like I
You're
wasn't
talking
good
to
at
a guy
school.
that was basically like Van Wilder in some ways compared to the rest of my government and law classmates. That's why I'm here, and that's why I didn't go in that field.
Yeah, it was just I loved baseball. I didn't enjoy having to go to school all day, all that. And I knew from a young age I wanted to be a wrestler. So
Sure.
in high school, like I had and this is kind of maybe going off a little bit of your question, but it's all connected.
Whatever you want.
I I had a lot of opportunities to go to Division II, Division III, JUCO schools, but I couldn't get offered by a lot of them because grade wise, I couldn't get in. So it limited me, and even to the point of when I went to Albury College, it wasn't until I graduated high school with a specific amount of credits and grades, all that I could even get in. So it wasn't easy to get there. Had a learning disability that didn't get picked up on until the end of my junior year, which really hindered me. But my heart was never in it in that sense because it was like, oh, I don't want to do all this schoolwork, to have to deal with going through school all day. I wanted to play baseball. And even like the day that I had to move into college, I was just begging my parents to stay home. Like, I don't want to. It had nothing to do with baseball. It was just the school thing and getting away from home. And I tried to drop out so many different times. I was literally packed my car up to go home, and my coach, like, essentially forced me, Coach Filer. I don't know if he's watched this, but I love you, Coach Filer. Forced me to stay because he's like, you're not leaving. Like, you need to do this. And he was right because it made me a better person. But I knew no matter what, after 4 years of college, I was going to be going and becoming a wrestler. My freshman year was my only year full of baseball. Battled injuries throughout college. Sophomore year was
COVID. Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, COVID was just like for college athletes, especially at the D3 level. I mean, I know you got the 1 year waiver, but
and because of injuries, I actually have like 2 or 3 more years of eligibility, which is yeah. So like my sophomore year in the fall, I hurt my shoulder and missed the entirety of the fall. Then COVID happened when I came back. Junior year came back. Missed the entire fall because of COVID. Spring semester starts. I get hurt, tore my labrum, messed up my rotator cuff, missed the entire year. And then senior year comes around. That's the first year of somewhat normalcy since freshman year. And I didn't get surgery for my rotator cuff and labrum. So I was just battling injuries. And I couldn't even say I was half the person I was before in terms of player. I couldn't sleep the night before games because I was so nervous of how my shoulder was going to be. Because it would be one of those where I literally can't lift my shoulder up. So it's like, how am I going to pitch?
Why didn't you get the surgery, though?
Truthfully, I was scared. I was scared, and I have like this. I'm messed up in the head. I'm messed up in the head, and for whatever reason, I told myself I could come back from it because the doctor told me there was a small chance I could go through rehab to fix it. So I tore it. It was one of the most painful things ever. It was similar to the first time when I got hurt. So I don't know if I potentially tore the labrum slightly the first time and it just went undiagnosed. But it was one of those where MRI, all that, like, yeah, it's torn, multiple spots, just all messed up. Family, friends, coaches telling me to, get the surgery. I decided not to. Tried to come back. It was dumb. Missed the entirety of the season anyways. And I mean, it cost me my senior year as well. If I got the surgery, it was, the timetable, I would have missed the fall semester or fall season, but I would have been back in time for the spring. Right. So it was dumb looking back on it, but I look at it as a lesson learned,
Did you recover from the injury eventually?
I took a long time after I graduated to get my body right for professional wrestling. So I healed as much as I could. I still have some issues to this day with it, but it's not popping in and out of its socket anymore.
So it's not torn anymore then?
Yeah, no, I didn't have to get surgery or anything, but I did a lot of rehab. And my senior year as well, I spent a lot of majority of my days were spent in the rehab facility at college. So it was a dumb mistake, but it's something I learned from. And I look at it, everything happens for a reason. For whatever reason, it was meant to be that way. If I went out there and I had a good season, I probably would have come back for a fifth year, and then I'm pushing
I
everything back with my career.
and I would say that I wouldn't be talking to you right now. You might
Yeah.
be making a decision of, do I want to go the route of playing independent ball, or maybe do I want to go and, play semi-pro ball and see what happens? Because guys, there's a lot of college athletes that, still decide that they can. It's a lot easier in baseball than basketball to make that career, just because
Mhm.
baseball, there's so many more leagues. You could play in there's like the Can-Am League, there's like the Jersey League with that plays in, the Mid-Atlantic. So you could have done those options and kept playing. And there's guys that were in the major leagues years ago that still play in those leagues. You could have
Yeah.
chosen that route, but you definitely made the right decision. And we're here on Sportswire Radio with the one and only Sugar, Dan Stofko. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. Here we are here with the live wire champion from Enterprise Pro Wrestling. If you want to follow Enterprise and Amplified Pro Wrestling, please follow them at Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling on Facebook. They have their next show coming up on March the 30th called Future Shock. And we're going to be talking a lot more about it next week with Lydia Myers. Lydia Myers is here coming up next week. I believe we're having here Monday or Tuesday night. So stay tuned on a further announcement. Really looking forward to Lydia's side of the story. I'm not sure if Kid Mike and Van Hansen might be looking forward to that too much. They've had their issues, obviously, with her, but we will certainly speak with her for sure. Looking forward to that. It's a great honor. But also, if you want to go to the show coming up, Future Shock, it's going to be at the same place it was at the Fight for a Cure. The doors open 6 o'clock, bell time 7 o'clock. It's first come, first serve. And that those tickets are going to come out. They're going to be too hot to handle, just like Sugar Dan Skopko is. So make sure you go out there and buy a ticket. You can go to the Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling Facebook pages. Also check out Amplified Wrestling on YouTube coming up here, because they've got Power Hour this Friday is coming back once again, more episodes in the work. So all great stuff here coming up. Let's definitely support those that go out there and support us here and being a part of All Wrestling Matters, and especially Sugar Dan Stokely. And I'll come back to the baseball story in a second, but we've got some live shows where we're going to see you back in the ring. First of all, we're going to see you next weekend for our friends over at Superstar Wrestling. And, how excited are you to be back out there in the ring, champ?
I'm very excited. I told you I can't go a weekend where nothing's going on. So, I Kid Mike commented in there, and I have so much love and respect for him because he gave me an opportunity when Dino at Atlantic All Star Wrestling gave me my first opportunity, and then Kid Mike gave me my second. And I went into that show on the 24th with a couple bookings and being stressed out about not having. I want every weekend full, and following Fight for a Cure, I'm filled until like mid-May right now. So I have so much.
I'm glad I got you now, champ, because if I don't get you now, I don't know if I'll be able to get you until maybe after Memorial Day.
I will make time for that. I can promise you that.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad, because Sportswire, it seems like that the word travels, so I appreciate it.
It does, but I have so much respect for Kid Mike because he gave me the opportunity, and there was no reason to give me an opportunity. Like straight up, like I saw the post on Facebook, I hit him up, and there was no reason for him to do that. He didn't have to, and he did. And I hope I made him proud and everybody else, and I'm so thankful for it. But I'm very excited this weekend. This is one of the bookings that just came up because of the Enterprise and Amplified show. It's gonna be my debut at SSW, and I'm very excited to get out there.
What's that like? Now, you've been a baseball player and you've had those nerves to be out on the mound before game day. So what are the nerves like versus getting ready for a wrestling show versus, let's say, game day when you're about to go on the mound?
They're so much different, but so similar at the same time. Like the baseball nerves, in a way, I forget what they felt like before the injury because, again, I was never nervous during my college career to pitch because I was so nervous about my body holding up. But, like, if I had to think back to, like, high school or even, like, freshman year, like, there were nerves, but more so, like, let's just go. Like, let's get out there. I just need this game to start. I need the first pitch to be thrown. And with wrestling, it's just it's when I'm at my happiest, to be completely honest with you. And just standing in the back and waiting to go, just a kill or be killed mentality, just ready to go. ready for the music to hit and get out there. And it's the best feeling in the world. Honestly, every time I get in the ring, whether it's for training, whether it's in a match for a show, it doesn't matter. It's just it feels like it's where I need to be. There's like a peace to it all because I look at it like there's no disrespect to anybody else. Like if you're a wrestler, I respect you and have admiration for you, but
Absolutely.
I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that nobody works harder than me. And all week, Monday through Friday, Saturday if I don't have a show, I'm torturing myself all day long with workouts, training, studying, dieting. I'm not the biggest dude, I'm not the strongest dude, the leanest dude. I'm none of those things, but I take care of myself. I work harder than anybody. So when it's time for the match, it's like that part's all the cake. You know what I mean? Because everything I'm doing during the week is for that point. So there's nerves, but it's because I care and because I love it, and it's just I want to get out there. I'm ready to go. I want to be out there.
Do you think that's an advantage that you have of being a college athlete in that you're so used to being prepared. You're so used to, fitting in schedule, whether it's, school, whether it's, let's say, extracurriculars, girlfriend, and then having to go hit the gym, be out there and work with your coaches to be able to get ready to go out there on the mound. And do you think that that gives you an advantage over, let's say, somebody else that's training to be an independent wrestler? Because again, this is something you've been an athlete your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
All you know is hitting the gym. All
Yeah.
you know is going out there and practicing. So in a way, does that maybe help you in the fact that you've already this is second nature? So you've been doing this since, you're probably 7 or 8 years old in training. What do you say on that?
No, 100%. And that was something I'll take every advantage I can get. Because again, I'm not the biggest dude in height, mass, anything like that. So I'm going to take any advantage I can get. And the fact that I am so self-motivated, I know a lot of people, and again, this is no diss because if you're putting in the work, you're putting in the work, but they need the music to get motivated to go lift. They need to be at a gym with a bunch of people to, get that extra push. I don't need that because I know I wake up Monday through Friday the same exact time every single day. I go to bed early because I need to be ready to go in the morning. I'm so regimented. I have a schedule that I need to follow. If I don't follow it, I'm a little stressed.
You're off with them. Oh, I somebody that does radio and does multiple things. I completely 100% agree. If I have a regimen, if I lose my regimen by 2 minutes, my day is shot. I completely agree.
But I also look at that as an opportunity to get better because things aren't always going to go perfect. So it's if one day I have to go to CVS to pick up 8x10s, right? That's an opportunity to figure shit out. Oh, sorry, I did not mean to curse. Figure stuff out on the fly.
I appreciate that you actually thought about that because some guys come on Sportzwire oh yeah, but I appreciate that.
It's been very difficult. I'm trying my absolute hardest.
No, you're doing great. I couldn't ask for any a better interview, to be honest.
But yeah, no, it is an advantage, and I'll take every advantage I can get. But it's just I'm self-motivated. I can lift without music. I can listen to a podcast. It's just I get my stuff done. I work as hard as I physically can every single day, and game day or the day of your match, that is supposed to be the fun aspect to it. If you're not having fun doing that, then why are you doing it? So I think that I know plenty of people that are dreading that day, dreading going out there. And I just can't relate to that because it's just, I can't wait to get out there. And I think that it all goes into the preparation each day of the week.
Do you think it's also because of the fact that you've been a baseball player and you've dealt with injuries and maybe you appreciate the ride a little more than, let's say, somebody else that goes out and says, you know what, I want to go out and be a wrestler. I want to go train. And, maybe they didn't, because again, you're a unique story. There's not every day you speak to somebody you were a college baseball player. You weren't just some, guy off the street. You were a college baseball player. So you were an athlete. You recruited, you made a team. It doesn't matter if you won 100 games or no games. You were a college baseball player. So in a way, do you think maybe that some people that go about it don't appreciate things or don't understand the ramifications? Because if they're going about it as an independent wrestler, more than likely either they were a fan of wrestling or they may not have the whereabouts or maybe the shape that you're in, but you have kind of institutionally like all those experiences to appreciate the fact that, hey, I was a college athlete. I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
I struggle with it still. I need people to remind me sometimes. Like it wasn't until after I graduated and finished playing baseball that I realized like, oh hey, the majority of people don't play collegiate sports. And like to me, it was never a question of doing that. And that's not meant to be like an egotistical thing, anything like that. It was just to me like that's what you do. And even right now, like just like making my debut in the ring and like people like tell me how proud they were and this and that. It's like, well, this is what you're supposed to do. You start training, you get in the ring, but like you forget how many people can't get to that point, like physically or mentally. And like there's little wins along the way. And those little wins though, they're only little once you get to a certain point. You know what I mean? And it's like they're big right now and they're very big to other people. And it's winning the belt, like for whatever reason, it didn't hit right away because it was like, yes, I'm supposed to be this. Like I am good enough. Like I'm supposed to be getting crown champions wherever I go. And that's just because I know how hard I work. And again, that's not supposed to be a cocky thing. Like I have a humble confidence is what I like to call it. But it wasn't until like my girlfriend seeing the belt and it brings
Well, that's going to help with your girlfriend. I mean, listen, I don't know much about anything else in life, but I'm sure when your girlfriend saw you had a big championship belt, I think she's going to stay around with you a while.
Well, and she was able to be there with her family, which is cool, and like FaceTiming my family the next day and them seeing it, and then bringing it home and them seeing it then, and then my best friend who's a diehard lifelong wrestling fan, being over and seeing it and holding it. It was those things that started to make me realize like, oh yeah, this isn't normal. And then I said to you that yesterday was the first time it started to sink in, like
Yep.
that I did something. And it was because I went out to my ring. So I do have a ring in my backyard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was in there and I was training. And afterwards, I sat down and the belt was sitting out there. And I was like, man, like I'm kind of doing something a little bit right now. Just being out on the indies and like I remember not being able to sleep at night because I couldn't find anywhere to train and nobody would bring me in to even help out with set up rings. And then finally I came across somebody that would help me set up ring or allow me to help set up rings. And then I found somebody that would allow me to come train with them. And like now here I am, people having the confidence to put me in a title match. And that is where it started to
Well, I would have said, champ, that, if I was the promoter, the businessman, a guy who's got a baseball background, a guy that, is certainly, I know they have nothing to do with each other, but I would say, oh, that's actually a guy I would want to actually put a world championship on because he was a guy that's got a really unique story, a college baseball player and, actually had that journey and it was, had some success on the mound. And I would actually think that that could be a way to promote because we see it all the time in wrestling. Athletes come in and, they don't have that success, but you seem to be doing that. And I also, before I get to some comments, want to promote a show. We're also going to see you in addition to Enterprise and Amplified. We're going to see you at WrestleMania weekend. Do you want to talk about that for us?
Yeah, I don't have too much information right now, but I'll be performing, I believe it is April 5th.
Yes,
WrestleMania
at April
weekend.
5th. Yep, in Woodbury, New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, Woodbury. I'll be back there, I believe, May 18th then as well for Atlantic All-Star Wrestling, which that was the first company to book me for a show.
You wrestled there in December, if I'm not mistaken, the Triple Threat.
Yep, debuted in December and then got brought back here last weekend and we'll be coming back again a few more times. So love it there. I mean, I've been very blessed where everywhere I've gone so far, it's been a great experience and just very thankful to the people that are bringing me in and continuing to do so.
Absolutely. And I also want to promote again March the 30th. And we're going to have the Beer City Bruiser from Ring of Honor is going to be on our big show coming up at Future Shock. I'm excited about that. And, I want to come back to Enterprise and Amplify because obviously we spoke a little bit about Brandon Castelli, but some names that I know very well. And I'm curious on what your thoughts are. I mean, first of all, I got to ask you about Chase Wakefield, the Bitcoin billionaire, a man that some people say is only as big as a string bean. Other people want to say that his head might be bigger than the rest of his body. But he is a Bitcoin billionaire after all. He is in my Hall of Fame, and I do actually happen to like him. But, would you like to be in the ring with Chase Wakefield, especially after what I've seen with him in the ring most recently? He's coming back to Sportswire next Saturday because I'm actually going to call one of his matches on the air because we're doing live commentary now as well. And you have anything you want to share about Mr. Chase Wakefield, the Bitcoin billionaire, who apparently in another life, another promotion, says he's Aaron Jones's best friend?
I hate to admit it, but I kind of like the guy. I kind of like him.
He's in my Hall of Fame. I can't say I don't like him. I put him in the Hall of Fame.
I don't know what it is about him. I don't know if it's the fact that if he does bother me enough, I'll just put him over my leg and snap him like a twig.
Oh, you'd snap him like a baseball bat. I mean, other players' baseball bats you'd break in half when you jammed him on the mound.
Exactly. Maybe a little Bo Jackson, break him over the head.
I do remember that. Bo knows.
Yeah, I don't know. We were next to each other selling merch during intermission at Fight for a Cure, and I had a little conversation with them. I was like, man, I kind of like this guy, unfortunately, but I would love to share the ring with him. I already shared it with one of his partners, so might as well get in there with him as well.
No question about that. I wanted to actually put up here your Twitter's Instagram. First of all, let's do Instagram. So if you want to follow Dan, you can actually do that right here. So if you're on Instagram, make sure you give him a follow. You can see some of his stuff in action. You can see some of the photos, some of him in action. Also see him here, most notably with that championship, winning the Live Wire Championship, and he's undefeated in singles action. Well, at that moment, I don't want to spoil it for anybody out there, but we've also seen him here in the ring, also for Atlantic All-Star Wrestling. So do you want to talk about Atlantic All-Star Wrestling and working for them now? You've been with their company for I would say about 4 months, just about. So we'll see you in the ring with them also in May on their standalone show, May 18th.
Yeah, I mean, I owe so much to Uncle Dino, the promoter. He, like I said, he gave me my first opportunity, and I'm forever thankful for him. It changed my life, like straight up. I was in a spot where it was getting frustrating, just working as hard as I was and not getting an opportunity yet. And there's, the saying, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And I was staying ready, and the opportunity came about, and he put me out there. A bunch of things changed the day of the show. A couple minutes before the show happened is when I found out what match I was in. And we went out there and had a fun match that I'm very proud of, and it was a fun debut, and got brought back in, and every time I go out there, I want to make him proud too. Same thing, like I said with Kid Mike. It's one thing to get compliments about being an in-ring wrestler, but when you get the compliments about like the person you are as well, and then doing the little things like reposting stuff that I'm doing and saying kind words on Facebook public to other promoters, like that's the kind of stuff that tells me what I'm doing is right. Because I don't think that happens if you're just, a good wrestler, but a pain to deal with or a problem or something like that. So there's a lot that goes into being a wrestler, and it's not just what you do inside the ring. It's what goes in outside of the ring as well.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I think my philosophy in life is, you treat people the way you want to be treated. If you conduct yourself a certain way, you will be able to open doors. And again, you were a baseball player, so I think in baseball players always had some type of professionalism. Leave aside the '93 Phillies. You're a Phillies fan. Those guys were basically like party animals. Lenny Dykstra, Kurt Schilling, but we'll get it at a different time. But the fact is, as a wrestler, I think that you learn some of those traits. I do have a question for my buddy Ethan Sorensen. I have not let him ask a question. And do you have a favorite match that you've rewatched, or it could be your own or anybody else? Do you have anything like that maybe you watch or rewatch in preparation?
I hate to say it because nobody has seen it online yet, but I think this past weekend is one that it's either this one or the one in which I won this beautiful belt in. It's tough though, because each match it has a different spot in my heart, but this past weekend there was just, each time I've been out there, I've been more comfortable, and which is, that's natural, and starting to figure myself out. And this past weekend, I felt the most free I've ever been, and that really gets me excited for the future because I'm thinking ahead to March 30th. If we were able to put on as good of a show as we did, what's a month's difference going to make? Over a month's difference. And that's what's like really getting me excited. So I think I'm going to say this past one where I faced TJ Reno, because I feel like I'm starting to put a lot of things together.
And you were cutting some promos on him too. I got a chance to watch some of those. I mean, so you were
Yeah,
certainly maybe getting in a little bit of a groove. I think that kind of helps in terms of where you want to go because now you're getting your feet wet. You're kind of knowing your
exactly.
way around. Obviously the training wheels will still be on, but you're at least getting to know what you should need to do, what you should be able to do. And I think that that's going to speak volumes, into where you go. And I was curious also in with the fight for a cure. What did that mean to you in working a show like that? That was, fighting for a young girl who's certainly going through, a terrible thing and Ewing sarcoma. And, what did that mean to you on a personal level?
It meant a lot just for the situation at hand. Um, it there is a different feeling being out there for sure than just another wrestling show. There was an extra motivation, I think, for everybody in the back too. I think everybody would say that, where it's like, if you're not going out there as a wrestler and saying I want to steal the show, have match of the night, whatever it may be, like you're not doing it right. But then when you have that situation where you just want to like you want everybody to be enamored in what's going on in the ring and forget about what else is happening in the real world. That is what our job is, right? It's not just to entertain, but it's to take you into another universe.
Right.
I'm a diehard Star Wars fan. That's where I go when I need to get away from real life. I get lost in that galaxy. That's what we're supposed to do as wrestlers. And I
Sure.
just hope that we were all able to do that night. It was a special feeling to be able to be a part of that. And it's something I'm always going to remember.
Absolutely, and certainly we'll see if you're at the ring on May 4th, and May the 4th be with you. Maybe the 4th be with you, maybe the 4th be with you. And I have one little minor Star Wars that I know people will give me flack for this, but I saw The Rise of Skywalker like 8 times in the movie theater. So that was the last Star Wars. I liked it. Some people were like, well, it was kind of, inconclusive, but I did like The Rise of Skywalker. I have to admit, I did get a chance to see it and enjoy it. I saw it in all forms. I saw it in Dolby, I saw it in IMAX, and I saw it in the standard. So I don't know. How did you feel on The Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars thought?
I was not a big fan of the sequels, but
Okay.
I always say this: if you are a fan of the sequels, there's nothing wrong with that. No matter what you're a fan of, like that's fine. Because to me, like I have the things that if we're getting real nerdy with it, that in my head are canon, that are part of the Star Wars galaxy,
Yeah.
and what's not. And there's nothing wrong with somebody agreeing or disagreeing. It is what it is. So to the people that love it, I'm happy for you. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But I'm also somebody that absolutely loves the prequel movies, and I know plenty of people that hated them.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. That's a good
yeah,
point. That's a very valid point. And the Mandalorian, everybody's obviously talking about. Also, sadly, because we lost the great Carl Weathers, of course. We
yeah,
also know him as Apollo Creed. Played like you played in the NFL, athlete like yourself, and everybody's talking about. Then there's this woman called Mercedes Monet who may be
yeah.
back in the ring soon, also a part of that. Speaking of nerdy things, I was curious since I will talk. We'll come back to some wrestling stuff in the current in a few minutes, but I understand you're a big card collector, and yours truly has collected a lot of cards in the past. And I still have my collection still relatively intact. And I was curious, and what got you into being a card collector? Because you have obviously done some podcasting on that.
Yeah, my dad is a collector. His dad was a collector, so it was
Oh
just one of
wow!
those things where growing up, opening up cards was what we
It
did.
was a ritual to get the Topps factory box baseball
Yeah,
set. It was a ritual to get that top set, the 792 cards or whatever it is now, a lesser number, and go through it and, just spend hours, collecting. I'm sure you had the top sets, growing up. You'd probably say the same thing.
yeah. No, I still do. Like I love um baseball cards is my number one thing.
Yep.
Love baseball cards, but I have a nice little wrestling collection.
I saw your on your YouTube channel there. I saw
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Wrestling collection. I love I love everything about cards. Like I don't know what it is, but
I was always, growing up, I remember as a kid when I grew up in Brooklyn, I would get an allowance and I would go out and buy a pack of Topps baseball cards. Or if I
yeah,
saved enough money over time, I would buy like, an insert card or whatever. So I remember, that was a big deal. Cards kind of, not to say they went away for a while, but they've made a big comeback in the last like 5 or 6 years. In fact, they made such a comeback where I live now. There's actually a baseball card shop that reopened, which was like
yeah,
they were like going to be extinct at one point, and they're making a little bit of a comeback. So, I always loved cards.
yeah. During COVID, it really became a big thing again, which is cool and also sucks in some ways because it made it very difficult to be a diehard collector for us people that don't have, the money necessarily to be collecting.
Well, I have the
But
money. I don't have the room anymore. I'd be honest with you. I would love to buy like more sets. I literally like in my house do not have any more room, unfortunately, to
yeah,
buy baseball card sets. I just, I have the AEW, the first AEW set. I think that's kind of where I last left off. And
mhm.
unfortunately, I, would love to buy more, but I don't know. I can't store them anywhere.
Yeah. No, I have unfortunately just like boxes laying around and stuff like that. Stuff that I still got to put away and on my desk. You can't see it, but I have autographed cards and stuff sleeved up that needs a spot to be displayed and all
Have
that.
you
But
gotten your cards graded as well?
I have one graded card in my collection, but it's just so expensive anymore to do it. I do have like graded cards, but it's one of those where there's going to be a discount coming up for baseball once the regular season
Yep.
starts. So I want to do a big send off of a bunch of rookies. Unfortunately, I was collecting Wander Franco rookie cards for a while. Yeah, that went down the drain. So thanks a lot, Wander.
Yeah, that's definitely. I can certainly see why. And I was also wondering. I also know that Topps is no longer. I think it's either after this year or next year is not going to be making the Major League Baseball sets anymore. That's kind of a crazy thought.
Yeah, I don't know because like their Tops is now owned by Fanatics,
Yep.
so I don't know exactly what all they're doing with that. I'm just trying to live in the moment with all of it. I want to try to start making some money doing cards and all
Well,
that,
there's a guy
selling
I
and whatnot.
interviewed in one of the companies I do work with who actually started his own like card store or something. So,
Yeah,
you should if you have the collection. I mean, yeah, I mean you should.
yeah,
You should try to, maybe do something with that. But yeah, I mean, these, I think it'll be interesting to see, like Piani has made now like the basketball cards,
hmm
the football cards, where Topps used to make everything. I even noticed
yeah,
that you were opening up Donruss football cards. I was like, wow, Don Ross makes football cards again. Yeah, Don Ross
yeah,
was used to be. I used to like as a kid. Don Ross would make the baseball cards, like the old baseball sets were really good with that. Then they kind of went away for a while, but they came back and yeah, Donruss was always like a really solid. So they were great with the old if you remember the Dick Perez, he would make the diamond set. He was
hmm
like those. I used to love those sets as a kid. The Donruss diamond collections of the
yeah.
certain players. So that was cool stuff. And I see you have a wrestling card collection as well. So any favorite wrestling cards in the collection? You have a Sting collection like everybody else. Do you have a Sting card, a
You
Sting
know what?
memento?
I do have a Sting card. I have a numbered Sting card. I believe it's to 25, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. With
Oh
it's a
wow.
T-shirt relic of Sting.
Oh
Um,
shoot. Okay.
so yeah, my wrestling card collection is not as big as I would like it to be, but I probably have the best set of wrestling is probably my best set of cards out of everything that I own. I have some really nice autographs, and everything that I have wrestling wise is actually stuff that I've pulled. I haven't bought
Oh
anything
wow.
on eBay, so that one's up there. Like I have a nice Bailey Matt relic along with autograph number to like 5 or maybe
Oh
10,
wow.
one or the other. So that's probably like one of my nicer ones. Um, uh, I have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat auto. Like I have some nice autographs in
That's
there.
some good ones. Yeah, that was like, wow,
Yeah,
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat autograph. That's a pretty good, Ricky
yeah.
the Dragon Steamboat, a lot of people's favorite wrestlers. And I do have one treasured collection. I actually have the 1998 WCW NWO Tops card set. I actually have that.
Mm.
I have it in like mint condition. I have Wolfpack Sting in there.
Yeah,
I
that's nice right there. That's
Yes,
some good stuff.
I have Wolfpack Sting in there. I have Hollywood Hulk Hogan. I have all those from that set. I have Goldberg, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, that's stuff that if you want to follow Dan, you can do that on his Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok pages. But I was also curious, and coming back to Enterprise and Amplified. I had Mr. Judgment on, and obviously Mr. Judgment is the Amplified Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion. Now, you've gotten a chance to share a locker room with Mr. Judgment, the Prophet of Purgatory. You might be Sugar Dan Stofko. You might be the guy that, again, has the largest arm. You might be the guy that's the bringer of harm and certainly got the greatest charm. But what's impressions for those that are listening and watching here on Sportzwire Radio on Mr. Judgment?
I didn't really get to talk to him much, but I've seen what he's doing. And all I'm going to say is I want all the belts. Every belt, every company. So I don't know what if Kid Mike's still here, but I think another belt would look good on this shoulder. That's
so you're saying maybe you and Mr. Judgment down the road.
All the belts. That's all I'm saying. You brought up Kenny during his belt collector days.
Yeah, he had like 8 belts at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I want 9. Maybe I want to recreate that Kurt Angle picture. I don't know. I don't know, but I want all the belts because. Honestly, now that I got gold one time, like I kind of want more because it looks really cool. This goes really good with my gear. So maybe I get to the point where I start matching gear with the belts. I don't know. But my opinion on Mr. Judgment, all the belts.
We'll have to find out. He's a man that currently holds technically 3 belts in his own right. He technically holds and one alter ego he may or may not be related to, the YouTube Championship in Versus World Wrestling. He's also the dominant Breakout Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion. He's the Amplified World Heavyweight Champion. I'm curious about something, and I never got a chance to think about this till I thought about it as we're here in the second half of the interview, probably about a half hour or so. Obviously, it's very, very much a big deal to have you on because of your journey. But do your teammates follow your wrestling career that you played baseball with? Like, what do they think about it?
I have a couple of them. A couple of them will reach out to me. I have a few that like really started reaching out to me because they're seeing it really play out and just tell me how cool it is. A couple of them tell me like how proud they are and all that, which means a lot. But for the most part, like I think I haven't heard much from a lot of them, but I think they also always knew like, hey, this is what he's going to do. Because I was very open, like in middle school, high school, I was so nervous and shy about being a wrestling fan. Like I wouldn't post stuff on my stories, nothing like that. And then I got to college.
I remember that. I do remember. Yeah. I'm a bit older than you. I remember as a kid growing up in the Attitude Era. Then I went to college, and it was like I was in college during the Ruthless Aggression era, and it was like, okay, don't even mention you're a wrestling fan. I don't even mention it. It was like there was a long period of time it was embarrassing to be a wrestling fan. I think now in the last 5 or 6 years, it's come back again. But I can understand that.
Yeah, it's just one of those where you go from being bullied for being a wrestling fan to then it's like, hey, we don't care. And I was they all knew about it. You know what I mean? Like, and they thought it was fun at times. Like, we'd be at a party or something. And like, I remember back in college, like we'd be just all hanging out. I'd just start DMing The Rock and Stone Cold and just, hey, like just messing around. And like, it was all just a joke.
Did they get in touch with you back? Did Stone Cold and The Rock?
No.
I figured that.
No.
You could have told us, yes, you're Sugar Dan Stofko. I'm sure you probably would have believed you.
They should have. We would have given them a good time. But, I'm like DMing Stone Cold and telling them to come out to the house and we'll have some Steve Weisers and all that. But no, like they all knew and stuff. And it was cool. But no, like some of them for sure. Some of them also have no idea what's going on. They're like, oh, when are you going to go to WWF? And I'm like, it hasn't been the F since, I don't
2002.
know.
It's April 2002. I mean,
Yeah, so we were like, my group was like 2, and then some of them weren't even alive. So I'm like,
yeah, I figured that. Because I know I cover a lot of college athletes, and there's a certain sub percentage that might be wrestling fans. But by and large, if you were a baseball player, a basketball player, you were into what you played because it was a serious, time investment, and you were focused into that. I could understand. I could definitely understand those things. Let me say hello, though, to somebody that shared a locker room with you. And he's one of my favorites, and I think I'm going to be seeing him real soon. He is the big man of DBW. He was in the Bears Rumble. He was in and out. He was literally like, you talk about your matches being short. Big Tex was in and he was out. He was quicker than a New York minute in the Bears Rumble, but he says it was nice to share a locker room with you. Anything you want to say about Big Tex? He's actually become one of my favorite guys. We speak actually off the air quite a bit. He actually sent me something which I mistakenly said to a very good friend of mine, Dean Allmark, who actually defeated Jushin Thunder Liger and Brian Danielson. I said, "Oh well, my friend made this video for you," and Mr. Big Tex actually said, "No, it wasn't me." So I was like, "Oops, okay, just go along with it. I'm not going to tell Dean Allmark he didn't make the video." But all kidding aside, Big Tex, do you have any thoughts on sharing a locker room with him? Hopefully, we see
No,
him here. Yep.
likewise. I mean, just I was being in that locker room for the first time with everyone. Like they couldn't have been cooler. Like I know, and I've heard stories of the young guys coming in, new guys, and they might get a little bit of shine, and just kind of horror stories of the young guys getting whether it be a championship or getting a nice spot on the card, and just kind of getting bullied, looked down upon. It couldn't have been further from that. Just a great locker room, a great group of guys and girls. It When I walked in, it felt like I was supposed to be there. So I really appreciate that, and couldn't be more likewise.
Yeah, I got to be honest, and I'm not just saying it because Van Hansen's been a friend. I've seen him, I know him through DBW and Kid Mike. I've gotten to know a little bit, but I really feel like it's a very family atmosphere and Enterprise and Amplified. I really feel like even just talking to like you or the other people that we're going to bring on, certainly Lydia Myers is going to come on, Sparrow, Arcane, we're going to bring him on at some point. There's a lot of other people that we're going to have on throughout the next several weeks and months. And I really feel like it's a really down to earth, really good atmosphere here in the company. I mean, obviously, I know the DBW guys, I've known them a while, Big Tech's included, but do you feel the same way? Because you were a baseball player, so you obviously you lived with guys, you did that whole grind. Do you feel like? Because I kind of feel like just from afar and getting to know some of you guys, it's a very like a really good family, down to earth atmosphere in Enterprise and Amplify. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, it does. Like I think that was like one of the cooler things, because I've been in great locker rooms and been a part of some great teams, and then also some that maybe weren't the best locker rooms and not.
Well, that's the toughest part when the last team you played on, when you didn't have that success, that's frustrating. When you're not
Right.
winning, you know how it goes.
Right. So just to be in a locker room, and like if the vibes aren't good and the group isn't clicking, like that's tough to go out and do your job, right? And like we all have a job to go out and do when we're a part of a match. And there was none of that. You could focus on what you needed to do, and the vibes were good from start to finish. Just like the next day and even that night, just everybody kind of like adding one another if we didn't know someone. And it was cool. It felt good. It feels like a brotherhood, which is how I feel like it's supposed to be.
Me too. Me too.
It's supposed to be a friendly competition as well. Again, you're supposed to go out there and want to have match of the night. And that should be a friendly competition to push one another. Because if you're doing that and from top to bottom, everybody's trying to have the best and biggest moments and not do it, to spite someone, you're putting on the best show then, right? And like that's what we're trying
Right.
to do. And it was a great locker room, great vibes. It was a great time, and I'm so excited to get back there.
Me too. And I cannot wait. That March 30th is right around the corner. Future Shock, it's the same venue, same time, only going to be 25 days from now. It's going to be called Future Shock. You're going to see a who's who of stars there. You're going to see our guest here also upcoming. He is the reigning defending Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion. To quote, obviously, that famous Motley Crue song, Live Wire. It is going to certainly be a live wire of a match when our reigning defending Live Wire champion from Enterprise Pro Wrestling, Mr. Sugar Dan Stofko, is going to be there in the ring. Certainly Sugar Ray Leonard, you're going to want to move on over. Sugar Ray Taylor, you're going to want to move on over, because Sugar Dan Stofko is certainly going to be too hot to handle, and that's why he is certainly the longest arm. He has got the greatest charm, and he is the bringer of harm. We're also going to see the Beer City Bruiser that's going to be there. Very, very cool. Great show. It's going to be sold out. And obviously, yours truly is supporting that show. And I will do whatever I can to make sure we get that another great crowd once again. I was curious also on this, and tell me your thoughts. And Like, what are your goals upcoming this year? Obviously, you've got this championship, but what's your goals?
Man, I want to be the best version of myself. I set a lot of goals. I have the list of guys I want to wrestle, all that. But I don't focus so much. Like I didn't go into this year like, oh, I want to win a championship. I want to do this. It was I want to be the best. And like my goal in professional wrestling for my career, not just this year, is to be the greatest of all time. I know a lot of people say that, but I truly want that.
Well, you did say you're a legend in the making, and I got news for you. You're already a legend because you're on Sportswire Radio, where all wrestling matters. And I might have an announcement for you at the end of the show. So I know you're saying you're a legend in the making, and greatness is coming or greatness is here. But I assure you, as the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, is your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. The Reverend Tom Bryce, you're already a legend.
Well, I appreciate that. That's just it's always been the goal. Like because to me, if you're on pace to be the greatest, everything else is going to come, right? If I'm
Sure.
limiting myself to, oh, I want to main event these shows and I want to become this champion, then it's one of those where that happens and it's like, okay, cool, I did that. But like to me, I want those wins to keep piling up. I want to get to the point where I am the best, and I'm sure that might and maybe will rub some people the wrong way, and that's not what it's meant to be. But I do believe that if you're doing something, your main goal should be to be the greatest of all time. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself. So I don't know specific wise. Like I don't have anything like. Of course, I want to be a main eventer for Enterprise and Amplified. I really do. I want to become the greatest champion in Livewire history. I want to defend against the who's, the biggest names on not just the company but on the independent circuit in singles matches, triple threats, fatal four ways. It doesn't matter. I just want to defend this belt, put on a show every single time, steal the show, and that's the main part. I want to become great, and in doing so, it'll just make a lot of moments for a lot of people. I want this year to be a great year for myself and all the companies I work for.
Oh, I have no doubt that's going to be the case, and it's going to be the case because you're going to follow Dan Stofko on all those great platforms there. So simple, easy, to the point. The only one that's different is Daniel Stofko on Twitter. So make sure you follow him. And I want to say hello to this person, Potato Power 42, and he says, Reverend. I don't know. Am I missing something on Potato Power 42? I don't know why I'm not knowing who Potato Power 42 is, but I'm thankful you tuned in. I mean, I thank you for giving me the exclamation point. I don't know what I'm missing on, but that's great stuff. Yeah, listen, I think in wrestling, you should have a healthy ego. I think that ultimately your goal should be to go to the top. Everybody, wrestling is a dog eat dog business. So the fact that you have that understanding and, there is no goal. Listen, there's no set determined goal. It could be anything you want it to be. So at the end of the day, it's going to be on how you choose to define your career. So I think that's going to be, where you end up. And I think that's why, we're excited, about the future. I was also curious, what does your coaches think about, you going into wrestling? What is that like?
I don't know if my high school coaches know for sure, but my college coaches know. And I mentioned him earlier, Coach Filer.
Yep.
Again, I don't think he's listening to this, but I have much love and admiration for that man as well. And I remember at the end of my junior year when we had our our individual player meetings,
like exit meetings, right? Usually you have the exit meetings because you get like 1 or 2 more days, and everybody then goes, and that's it. Nobody can see each other until. Well, in basketball, it's till the goofy October 15th. In baseball, it's what, January 15th, something like that, right?
Something like that, yeah. I don't.
You can tell I know college sports because I'm actually covering it.
It was after our season. He's like, I want us to meet. I was like, for what? I didn't do anything all year. Like I couldn't do anything. And we had our meetings, and he's like, all right, so what are you gonna do after college? I was like, I'm gonna become a pro wrestler. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, pro wrestler.
That reminds me in high school when I had a guidance counselor. His name was Mr. Byer. And every time he would meet me every few months, he'd say, Thomas, and we'd talk. And it was like, I don't know, it was just like nothing. It was like, I don't think I was like, I don't know, never got anything out of it. That's why I'm here and, you're there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, it was, we had so many great talks, and he kept me as close to being sane as I could in college. And again, just He is a big reason I was able to finish college and just being there for me. But it turns out that he was a minor fan of wrestling and knew some of the stuff that was going on and fully supported it. And he actually hit me up a couple weeks ago asking if this was like legit, like I was out there on some of these shows and stuff, and I told him yes. And it was a cool moment because we have such a unique relationship where he knows firsthand the struggle that I went through in school, both mentally and physically. Just because the physical injuries led to a lot of mental issues.
Yeah, that's tough. What you went through, because it's a couple things. As we're here again with the Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion, the one and only Dan Stofko. You can follow him on all these platforms. And I want to say hello to my buddy, Mr. Jackson Saber of DBW, and also Forever EBW. How you doing, Jackson? Always good to see you. Jackson was my first guest in 2024, so he's forever a trivia question on Sportswire. But it's so tough because on the field at Albright, you didn't have much success. And also off the field, you dealt with all these injuries. So it wasn't like, I speak with a lot of college athletes. I'm friends with a lot of them. And some of them either were good players or their teams didn't win, or they won as a team, but as an individual, coach didn't give them the minutes or something else didn't happen. But in your case, it was really a combination of both.
Yeah, it was embarrassing, like not just not winning, but also like my solo performance, because I never went through that before. Like, summer ball, like I can remember a couple, like one season in particular, it was my second with the team, and I was having a really good season. Then I had a couple bad outings, and I wasn't getting put out there much more after that because, or I should say, I wasn't starting as much anymore, so I was coming in relief. But besides that, I never really had struggled. Like, I had a very good career, and it became one of those where it was so tough to, like, I felt like I was somebody that really wrote off the confidence that I had. So then when you're not performing well, and you also know that you can't perform to the top of your ability, but you're working harder than ever before, that's really tough to, like, to do anything. You know what I mean? And that's deep, but it's one of those where I never worked as hard as I could in high school or beginning of college when it came to baseball. A lot of it was just natural ability. And then my junior and senior year, I really worked my butt off to become the best version of myself because I knew I had to, because I lost.
You went through the injuries, you had the labrum problem, you had to work extra just to be back on that mound. And
right.
It was almost kind of like, this is your moment. If you don't do it now, you're never going to really want to go back out there. Even though you had the eligibility, some players go and say, you know what, I'm going to go take the year, I'm going to play. But then as a D3 athlete, you have to work. So it's like, you're not getting, like, if you're done with school and you still have a year, in your case, 2, as you said, are you really going to go back out there and play? You're going to have to go through all that to be able to be on the field. You have to make that commitment if you're working or if you have a family.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough call to make. So, you had like so many things hit you. You had COVID. Remember, you had COVID happen. It was really tough. You lost the ability to be at school with your classmates, your teammates. And you had your injuries and the team's not winning. You were hit with a ton of bricks in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's tough because I was also a captain my senior year, and again, it was so tough mentally because I never struggled like that before, and I knew deep down, no matter what I said, whatever I did, I couldn't get back to where I was. I physically couldn't, which is really tough, and that's something that athletes when they're in their 30s and 40s struggle with. Now imagine a 21, 22-year-old kid and being a captain and somebody that I talked a lot. I truly believed that I was going to be back to my normal self. Like, that's just kind of the mentality you have to have as an athlete. And it turns out I wasn't. And I was stuck in, like, do I try one more year? Do I try? And, I had some coaches and teammates like, hey, maybe you should transfer and go somewhere and be out of the bullpen and all that. And my girlfriend played volleyball and softball in college, and she was a catcher. And she caught one of my bullpens where I went full out as if it was a game after my senior season ended. and I went full effort on it, and it started out really well, and then the injuries came back, and I couldn't keep going, and that's the last time I've thrown a baseball legitimately
Oh, wow.
off the mound, and it's one of those where I was okay with it. My second to last start in college, I left it all out there. I put everything I had into it. It was probably my
7 innings, right? 3 runs, I think, right?
yeah, I think so. I think it was like 2 earned or something like that. I think I let up
Yeah.
2 in the last inning.
Yep.
It was just one of those where the day of I woke up and I felt the best I had felt. I was sick all week, so I wasn't at practice or anything. And my coach and I talked afterwards. It's like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done anything during the week and just chilled and not done anything with my shoulder. But I left it all out there, and it was one of those where when I walked off the mound and got pulled during the 7th inning, I knew I was like, that was it. Like, I have one more start scheduled, but I left it all out there, and it was an emotional one because you don't normally know when it's it, you know? You
Yeah, it's
don't.
tough as
So.
an athlete. We see it obviously Sting, we think is retiring,
Mhm.
and we see it all too often in sports. Michael Jordan had retired and then he came back, and Tom Brady had retired and came back, and we think he's done. He's probably done. I mean, you see guys time and time again. Roger Clemens years ago actually looked like he retired and came back half a season for the Yankees. I mean, in sports, it's kind of the old adage of you never know when, father time catches up to you. In the wrestling world, we've seen it all too often. Flair and Shawn Michaels had made a brief return to the ring, and certainly Hulk Hogan wants to maybe have one more match. I think it's more of a delusional pipe dream at this point with his injuries. But, obviously Sting looks like, I think Tony Khan may have actually hit the nail on the head. This might be the most perfect send off, but it's tough in sports and wrestling. It is as a successful athlete. It's kind of tough when to kind of give it up. But you with your girlfriend being an athlete, do you talk to her a lot and about her experiences? Obviously that's really interesting that she's an athlete. She's been, successful. And, do you maybe be able to get to talk to her about things and she'll give you advice because she's actually also a very successful athlete?
Yeah, no, we essentially lived together my senior year, and she was there and kind of knew. I didn't have to tell her things for her to know kind of what was going on. Like I had a rule where nights before a start, like, you have to go back to your place and all that. And like, I need my time, but I wasn't sleeping. She could tell like the next day, all that. She knew, like, she was there for me not being able to move my arm and waking up in the middle of the night, rolling out of bed and in complete agony. But the other thing is she's here now, and she's literally been here from day one with my wrestling career. And
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
it's
Hopefully she's a
awesome.
wrestling fan now.
She is. She became a wrestling fan because of me, and she's gotten to be at all of my shows so far, which is really cool. And she's the person I bounce a lot of my ideas off of. Ideas, spots. Um, it's the best, and it's perfect because, like you said, her being an athlete, and I think so much about the um, what goes into a match with where you have to be mentally. It's just like you were saying earlier with being a baseball player, a softball player, volleyball player, getting to a point, the flow stage, really. Getting to
Oh,
that flow
I
point.
speak about it all the time. Even doing this, I was on a radio show Wednesday nights in a radio station. I had took a break from the show because I really want to focus on Sportswire because we have such a great demand for the platform. And I was telling one of my colleagues, and I said that flow is so important. And I said
Mhm.
one of the reasons I don't want to do that show for the time being is I don't feel that the host that I share the show with does not have a flow, and he just doesn't. He's not doing a very good job. And I had felt that there was nothing I could do to change that. And it's not my full show, and flow is so important in anything to have. And I think her being an athlete also helps a lot. I think that's really important because I just know from different things in life, if you have a support system that's going to help you go further places. That's why you are too hot to handle. That's why you do have the longest arm. That's why you are the bringer of charm. And you're certainly got, everything else, the greatest charm and the bringer of harm. And you've got everything rhyming and you're chilling. And that's why you're going to continue to be your reign here, supreme here in Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling here coming up. So let me ask you some few more questions. I could ask you hundreds of questions, but I know you're a busy man. You get ready to go back out in the ring and stuff like that. So first of all, what do you want to say to anybody you'll eventually square off with on March the 30th at Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling's Future Shock?
I don't have much to say. All I'll say is if you're going to get this belt off me, you're going to have to kill me. I'm not. I'm not losing it. I'm not losing it before I get a defense. It's just not happening. This thing, I said it before. It didn't hit me until recent, and now it's like before it was just kind of like in the room I'd walk by like, oh yeah, that's cool. My sisters are enjoying it and looking at it.
I gotta be honest. I've interviewed a lot of wrestlers from around the world. I mean, it's maybe 500-600 wrestlers. That might be, I gotta say, like the biggest belt I've ever seen. I mean, it's like wow.
Look at it. It's beautiful though. But
I gotta be honest. I've seen a lot of belts, and like that one is like, and I'm not just saying it because we love Enterprise. I'm in the Hall of Fame, but that belt is like, that's a really damn good belt. I got to be honest.
It is. It's a beautiful belt, and I'm proud to have it. I kind of want to make a deal with Mike and be like, hey, if I get through March 30th still champ, let's maybe, get a little extension on this thing so I can fit it around my waist. Like, I had this whole idea for the entrance. I can't do it now. Like, I don't want to drag this thing, but it's extremely long. So, like, maybe Kid Mike and I can talk about this and figure something out. But yeah, I'm not leaving without this championship. You're gonna have to kill me or take my consciousness away. Like I'm not walking out without it.
All right, that was a great answer. So give me a funny Van Hansen story. You have a Van Hansen story or two you want to share? Because V to the H is coming back, and he's actually coming back to be inducted into our Hall of Fame before March 30th. So you have a V to the H story?
You know what? Not yet, because I didn't meet him until February 24th.
Okay.
And a lot of my discussions have gone through Kid Mike and all that, because that's who I got in touch with about the show. But as soon as I get one, I'll be sure to show it or share it.
All right, fair enough. I'll take that as we'll rain check that. We'll bring you back on before the next Enterprise and Amplified show. I got to ask you, because naturally, two things. You're a huge sports fan. First of all, I was really mad about your Buffalo Bills losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, because I have to also say real quick, I think Haley Steinfeld's, first of all, better looking than Taylor Swift. And secondly, I think all of America was rooting for you guys to win. And as a New Yorker, technically, even though I'm not a Bills fan per se, but the Bills play in the state of New York, when are the Bills going to finally win a big one?
I'm trying to figure that out myself. The only team in New York, I need it because look, my teams. So I'm a Buffalo Bills fan because that's where my uncle was coaching at one point in time. He has bounced around a couple NFL teams. When he went to the Bills in 2013, I believe it was, I told myself, I don't care where he goes. This is my last team. I grew up a diehard Panthers fan.
Wow, you had some futility then. Okay.
Yeah, so a Panthers fan, then a Lions fan for 2 years, and then the Buffalo Bills. He's now with Miami Dolphins, which is hilarious because I hate the Dolphins probably more than any team.
Yeah, the Dolphins, I will say, though, I'm probably dating myself. I do remember watching them at the very end of Dan Marino's career when he literally couldn't walk. He was like throwing the ball, but he literally like couldn't move. I mean, that's how when Jimmy Johnson was the head coach.
Yeah. So to say the least, being a Phillies fan, a Flyers fan, a Sixers fan, a Notre Dame football fan, well, Notre Dame fan in general, but especially football, and a Buffalo Bills fan, I'm used to heartbreak left and right. With that being said, I will make sure that my fans do not have to deal with the same heartbreak that I do when I'm inside the ring.
Okay, the Sixers, yeah, I mean, we'll see if this is their year. I don't know if it's their year. You mentioned the Flyers. Well, the Flyers have improved. I mean, give Tortorella credit. I don't know if they're a Stanley Cup contender. You mentioned the Bills. Okay, the Bills we spoke about. And then Phillies in baseball, at least. You got the Phillies.
Yeah.
Did you remember the 2008 World Series winning? They did win the World Series then.
I do. It's so tough. Like I always say, like I barely have witnessed my teams win anything. Cause I'm 8 years old, right? So it's like I remember it, but like it doesn't hit the same. I was at Game 3 of the World Series in 2023. I walked out of the stadium with no doubt in my mind that we were winning the World Series, and when we lost, I legitimately had tears in my eyes. Last year there was no tears; there was just pure rage and anger.
You're up 2-0 against a bad D-backs team. You beat the Braves pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
And, you're up 2-0. You're going back to Philly up 3-2, and, you lose both games at home.
It's brutal. Like, that was, again, not sad. It was pure rage and anger. Like, the World Series is like, okay, yeah, it's the Astros. That was a great team. The Diamondbacks, that one.
Listen, the Diamondbacks backed into the playoffs. I mean, they were a joke. They got swept the last series of the season and still made a wild card. I mean, come on.
Yeah. It just, because the whole talk, like, I remember thinking, like, oh, man, I hope I get to see them clinch, because I had a couple shows lined up during the playoff series. So when they dropped their first game, Game 3 of the series, I was like, oh, that's okay. I'm definitely going to be able to see them clinch the World Series.
That's right, because they came back to Philly for 6 and 7 in the middle of the week, if I recall correctly.
Yep. Yeah, so I got the pleasure of being able to watch those losses. So that was
sorry to hear.
Yeah.
But at least you got to see them win a World Series. I'm a Mets fan. I've never seen the Mets win a World Series. I'm an Islanders fan in hockey. I've seen nothing with that. I suppose I lean toward the Jets in football. In basketball, I'm Knicks and Nets because the Nets play in Brooklyn, and the Knicks, when I was a kid, were Brooklyn's team, but the Nets play in Brooklyn. I've seen none of my teams win. College, because in New York City, we really don't have a college like football team or basketball team, really. I mean, St. John's kind of, but I don't really root for those teams. One of my buddies went to Syracuse, but that's a different conversation for a different time. Before I get to closing thoughts, your uncle coaches in the NFL. Do you ever ask your uncle at all for a lot of advice? Craig Stofko, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
No, my uncle is a Crossman, Danny Crossman.
Okay.
No, you know what? Not really. Just with his schedule, how busy he is, we don't really get to talk much.
That's a 24/7. I mean, you're off the season. You might be more off the grid than during the season because you're scouting and film. I get it.
Yeah. So I'm not even sure how much he knows what's going on yet, but I'm sure at some point we'll get to talk and kind of discuss some of those things, because I am fascinated with kind of how the mind works with that, because he played a little bit in the NFL. He played in the World League.
I remember that was Goldberg played in the World League.
Yep. So my uncle, actually, he won their version of the Super Bowl. He was the MVP of that game.
It's the early 90s.
Yep. So I would love to kind of ask questions about that, but when it's one of those, and I get it, when we get to see each other and talk, football is not really talked about. Sports is.
I can imagine. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll certainly see. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we have certainly ran the gauntlet here tonight with Dan Stofko, Sugar Dan Stofko. Definitely the Sugar Show. It proved that there was a lot of sugar. You certainly want to make sure that this man you are following on all great platforms. Before I ask him one more question, I got all the links up here. Also, please make sure you support our friends over at Enterprise and Amplified Pro Wrestling, especially Atlantic All-Star Wrestling, May 18th. Dan's going to be back out there also for them. Superstar Wrestling is going to be next weekend. Also, April 5th, WrestleMania weekend. He's going to be back out there with a number of great dates. If you want to get out and support him on all these things, you can do it here below. And before I get to closing thoughts, I wanted to ask you, and, is there been, one or two moments that stand out most in your baseball and wrestling career so far?
For baseball, it would probably just winning the third championship with my team. Because the first 2 years we won it back-to-back, lost it the third, won it the fourth. And it was just a great moment. I knew it was over. Like, I could no longer play with that team after that year. So to end it with a win, become a champion 3 of the 4 years, that meant a lot. And for wrestling, I mean, it's gotta be winning this at this point, right? I got to be out there. The person I wrestled, Demo, is somebody I did train with and still train with. So that meant a lot to share the ring with him. And then, I didn't really like the way he was acting out there. So to beat him with Travis Norbert in his corner and then win this big, beautiful piece of gold, it means a lot. And I'm just looking to keep making some memories and defend this thing March 30th. And like I said, afterwards, I don't know. don't tell Kid Mike this, and hopefully he's not listening. I might have to snag the mic from DVG and demand to get a bigger strap on this thing because I need to get it around my waist.
Well, you know what? DVG is going to certainly have to ante up those intros because, people tell me that my intros are pretty good. So, I mean, DVG is in our Hall of Fame. I love DVG, but, maybe DVG has to kick it up a little into third gear and certainly give Sugar Dan Stofko that introduction that he deserves. But, Dan, I got one more thing for you before I get to close this. It has been an absolute honor to have you, and I have no doubt that we'd love to have you more often. But, I was thinking about this. You've had a great career in the world of baseball. You had an interesting journey. You went from baseball player to now wrestler, up-and-coming wrestling star, champion, and all these great things. I mentioned all these different colleagues of yours who are in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And hopefully I'm not getting, too big for my britches here. And, maybe you'll be modest. Maybe you won't. But you are Sugar Dan Stofko. After all, it is your show, the Sugar Show. But I was thinking maybe, next time you come on to the show, would you like to be inducted into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Let's do it. It would be an honor to do so.
And, you actually could fit the description perfectly because you were a college baseball player turned wrestler. So, some people say, well, it's only wrestling. But actually, in your case, you bridged both of them because you were a baseball player and you were a champion baseball player in kind of the summer leagues. And now you're a wrestling champion. So actually, this gives you a unique story, kind of like my old buddy, the natural born fighter, R.P. Davis, the first person I inducted, who was a first ever boxing champion in England turned major wrestling world champion. You've actually been a baseball player. And I'm trying to think, there hasn't been too many guys I could think of that I know of that are college baseball players that turned out to become pro wrestlers. I think that, to me, I think this should happen, in the next month or two, whenever your time allots, to bring you back on and give you the opportunity to be inducted into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. But you didn't think I was going to ask you, but I did anyway.
No, absolutely. I'll be on here anytime you need me, anytime you want me.
Well, I can't have you on every day because then at that point you'll be like, well, you got to go out and you got to hit the gym and, spend time with your girlfriend. I mean, but time is allotted. Absolutely. I think after some of the shows, I think after Enterprise and Amplified shows, obviously also Enterprise and Amplified on their YouTube page at Amplified Wrestling. Power Hour debuts 1 o'clock each Friday up until our next big show on the 30th. And I know Dan's going to be out there in the ring. So check out all of that. Also follow Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling. And I'll be back here in about a little over an hour or so with Austin James of EBW, Forever EBW, DBW, and other companies to be inducted into our Hall of Fame. So I think the Livewire champion needs to take his place in our history, Sugar Dan Stofko, because we also want to make sure he's ahead of Sugar Ray Taylor, who was on Sportswire, and we had him on. He won the Carnage Hardcore title, and we said the next time we'd bring him on, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. I want to go with you first, Dan, but we'll definitely do that. We'll pick a date sometime next month, and I'm really looking forward to that. But until then, Dan, it has been a really cool opportunity to have you on the platform. You have such a unique journey. It just bridged to so many things I've also done in the world of college sports and now wrestling. And you've got a great story, a great background, and, hopefully get some merchandise up there because my running joke is all my wardrobe is wrestling shirts these days. So I want to add yours to the description because at this point, all I do is, like I said, wear wrestling shirts. In fact, it's so bad to the point I'm supposed to go to a wedding. And I said, the only way I'm showing up to the wedding is if I can wear one of my wrestling shirts. So, but I think the person looked at me like with two heads. But then I said, well, you seen my bank account? And they were like, okay, all right. Yeah, that's always my running joke. I'm not the guy that used to be VKM, but I'm definitely in a comfortable zero range. But not enough about that. It is an absolute honor. Let's give you the floor. Let's give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And Champ, the floor is absolutely yours.
No, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I will be back on anytime you need, anytime you want. This thing will still be with me. And
next month,
Kid Mike loves me so much, and because I'm going to defend this on March 30th, he's going to extend this for me so it can go around my pretty little waist. There will be merchandise coming up soon. Hopefully tomorrow, actually. I'm going to make sure there's something up there just for you, Tom, that you can wear to the wedding. And we're going to have black T-shirts, white T-shirts, blue T-shirts, pink T-shirts.
No, everything
those are my colors.
I'm even wearing a Support Backyard Wrestling shirt, which is probably like all the pro guys hearing, why are you doing that? Well, that's just who I am. But no, obviously, get the shirt ready, and I'll wear it, and I look forward to it.
Absolutely. And if you see me at shows, come up, take a picture. I got merchandise. I got signed 8x10s, got friendship bracelets because, Taylor Swift made that a big thing too, I guess.
Although I said before, I think Haley blows Taylor out of the water.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with you. But you got to capitalize on what's hot.
I get it. No, it's funny. I shouldn't say this, but I was listening to Mandy Rose's podcast about a month or two ago, and she was talking about Taylor Swift, and she was like, "Well, Travis Kelce, he could get any girl, he wants, and you look at her. And I'm not saying she's not pretty, but she's like, compared to the other men they get in football, and her fiance was Tito Sabatelli, who actually played in the NFL, and he was kind of smiling because he knows what they get. So, but that's here nor there. But yes, friendship bracelets, go out and get them. 8x10s, go out and get those signed. Photos, but most importantly, buy a ticket to Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling show coming up called Future Shock. Yours truly is going to donate one ticket to somebody before the show so they can have the opportunity to go. And also, Kid Mike, before we sign up, says, I'm back, guys. I'll be rewatching this Had to Eat Dinner with the Fam. I hope dinner is good. And what are you having for dinner before I let you go? So hopefully, dinner was good. And I hope that you enjoyed the interview. And I hope you enjoy more Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling coverage. We spoke a lot about you guys. And I have more coverage coming up next week with Lydia Myers. So I'm sure, Mr. Kid Mike, you're going to be tuned into that one. It's either going to be Monday night or Tuesday night next week. So either one of those days, hopefully you have something to say and everybody else does. And we're going to bring a few more guys and gals before the next show coming up. And I even hear from a birdie that a father of Kid Mike's might be coming on eventually at some point. I don't know if it's before March 3rd because my schedule's really tight, but I think you might be hearing from somebody that might be the papa of Kid Mike. So he won't be called Kid Mike. You can't call him Old Mike, but what that would make him? Maybe Senior Mike. Senior Mike. Senior Mike. Can't call him Old Mike. Senior Mike. That's a good one because it's respectful. It's right in the middle. So we'll go with that. But Champ, it has been an absolute honor. You have definitely proven that you've got the longest arm. You've got the greatest charm. You're the bringer of harm. You're too hot to handle. And you definitely proved why it was the Sugar Show. And I look forward to the future and certainly look forward to everything else you're out doing there in the ring. And congratulations on all the success. I can't wait to induct you in the Hall of Fame coming up here next month when you come back. And thank you so much for your time. And it's been an absolute honor.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Tom.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the reigning, defending Enterprise Pro Wrestling Live Wire champion, the one and only Sugar Dan Stofko. He'll be in the ring coming up next weekend for Superstar Wrestling. You're going to see him also on WrestleMania weekend, that Friday, April 5th. He's also going to be back here, most importantly, on March the 30th for our friends over Enterprise and Amplified Wrestling for their show, Future Shock. Their next one's going to have the Beer City Bruiser from Ring of Honor and many other friends of Sportswire Radio. You'll also see Dan also coming up on May 18th for Atlantic All-Star Wrestling. Stay tuned for more details on that. But if you're on SportswireRadio.org, I'll be back here in a little over an hour to induct Austin James in the Hall of Fame, the forever EBW World Champion, also from the group Ego. And if you're on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, hang on tight. I'll see you guys in an hour. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On the number one global station that is Sportswire Radio, is where I stated all wrestling matters, and you were on the Sugar Show. So thank you, everybody, as we definitely got the sugar and some. Good night for now. I'll see everybody in an hour.